Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tradesmen Talk, where Wilson and I get to talk to each other about ways that we can improve our businesses and ways that you yourself can improve your service-based business. If you're on the fence of deciding whether or not you should start one, these conversations can certainly help motivate you take that leap of faith and bet on yourself. Because if you realize the solutions are out there, it really comes down to you just taking action and going for it. And so this conversation is going to help support you in that. And if you're an established business, likely you'll benefit from this conversation as well. And today specifically, yeah, because specifically we're going to talk about a continuation of what we spoke about last week, which was increasing the profits of your business. And we broke that into decreasing your expenses, as well as increasing your income. And we spoke in a good amount of time on decreasing expenses. So I really encourage you to review or check on that video. Now, for today, we want to talk about specifically increasing your profits. And by increasing your revenue, simultaneously decreasing your expenses, you can certainly expect more profit. And we want to go into a few different ways today on how you can increase your profits by focusing on the revenue side of the business. And we'll dive into that. But before we get to that, Wilson, how was your week?
Good week as always, man. We, obviously I think having a good week is a decision, but we got some cool things in the works. I mentioned to you that we found our third employee to bring on full time, and then we actually lost a second one. So, it was one step forward, one step back. But we got about one more week of training on this newer employee, and she's crushing it, man. She's fast. She's really fast, but her work quality is super good, which is something that we prioritize. And she has the right mindset. So we're going to be going live and launching. If anybody's listening, looking for a job in Austin, Texas, you can shoot me an email at support@cabinet.com.
That's a great point. There's actually a ton of opportunity in Texas in general, but especially around the Austin area seems to be somewhat of a hub that people are gravitating towards. There's a lot of opportunity over there, a lot of growth, and plenty of opportunity to expand into the cabinet business.
Yeah, I mean, we told our legion, this guy called us trying to sell us leads, and we told him, I was like, look, dude, we have no shortage of leads. We're actually turning business away. The problem that we have is, like everybody else, finding the quality people that we want to bring on. And even then, it's not impossible. It just takes time and filtering. So, it always feels nice to tell the lead guy that we don't need leads. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that seems to be the case with a good amount of home service businesses. You do have your cohort or your group of people that could really benefit from having a consistent stream of opportunities. But you also have a large group of home service professionals that have a consistent flow of leads, but their bottleneck is in the fulfillment.
Yep.
And so they are in a position of turning away business because they're already booked out so many months. And so, with us, as we're growing our business, not only our cabinetry business, but our education side, there's always similar challenges, whether you're in windows or flooring or cabinetry. A lot of the challenges in your business can overlap with businesses in other industries. And one thing we've noticed is the challenge around hiring and training people. And if you can hire people, well, training that person effectively and having a system for that as a way to continue to grow your business, it can be more challenging than it seems. And once you get started, you start to realize exactly how challenging it is. And so much to the point where we speak to many guys and women about wanting to grow their business, but they don't believe there's any good people out there, where they don't believe, people want to work hard. They have these beliefs around reactions around some of the situations they have experienced with training people.
Yep.
So if you specifically are listening to this episode and you're at the point where your business has a consistent flow of opportunities, but your real challenge is having the ability to keep up with the demand, I encourage you to send us an email at support@cabinetstartup.com. There's a few different ways that we would be able to help you. I've had to go through that experience myself. We have several locations in Florida, and
a few times
we got to the point where, we were doing about 12 kitchens a week. And that doesn't come by accident. That comes by having systems and a way to train people effectively. So if you're looking for guidance on that, shoot us over an email. We'd be glad to help you. But in terms of the topic at hand, which is increasing revenue, there's a few ways to do that. And I kind of want to go over each one and then maybe give some examples. But one of the first things that I think of when it comes to increasing your revenue with your home service business is to increase your prices. One of the things that now more than recently, our expenses are going up. We have higher costs with fuel, certainly, transportation, with materials, whether that's paint, plastics, metals, all of them, all of these construction materials are going up in cost. And you may find yourself needing to pay people more because that's what the expectations are now becoming. And so with all of these things in consideration, or even all of these things you're currently experiencing, it could be a great time now more than ever to really evaluate your financial model. A lot of us get into these home service businesses charging a certain way because maybe that's how we were taught, or maybe that's what seemed profitable at the beginning. But as we grow our business, or as the economy changes, the environment changes, that original financial model may not be as suitable, and it certainly may not be as profitable for your business. When expenses are increasing, and even if revenue is being maintained, your profit is going down. And I've seen this a lot of times with contracting businesses, and at periods of time, I've experienced it myself where, things may be changing in your business, but because you still have enough money to cover everything, you're not addressing those changes, the negative impacts that are happening to your business. You might be to the point of profitability where things can fluctuate quite a bit and all of your bills are still paid. And for some people, they don't fix something until it becomes a problem. And the way they define problems typically resort to impacting themselves. It's not a problem unless it's impacting me. And I used to view politics that way when I was in high school. I didn't really care about politics because I didn't see them as affecting me. Well, now as you become an adult, you can see things a little bit differently, and you can extrapolate things affecting you more so than you may have thought previously. And so if you're noticing these changes, or if you haven't quite yet noticed these changes in your business, I encourage you to really dive into your numbers and really determine, are things as profitable as you thought they were at one point? Because I've noticed quite a few expenses changing over the past 6 months, and we've had to adapt and adjust some things so we can recalibrate in a way that better suits us. And so, when it comes to increasing our revenue, you may need to charge more right now just to maintain your revenue. And so when you consider your increased expenses, you then want to ask yourself, where do we want to be at a profitability standpoint? And making sure that all of your expenses are getting paid, but also recalibrating your business so that you're producing the profit that you sought to produce is a crucial thing. And especially if you're looking to continue to grow your business, you're going to need additional profit so you can build additional cash reserves that can better support your growth.
I think a really simple way of looking at what you're saying, that a lot of, I don't see many contractors doing this, because sometimes when I'm talking to them about their business, I'm like, what's your profit KPI? They're like, I don't know what you mean. Like, okay, what's your, what is your specific profit number that you want to hit every single month? You're like, oh, we aim for 30%. I'm like, okay, were you hitting it? I think so. It's like, man, I think so is not a very strong indicator of you hitting your goal. Somebody's like, hey, did you get a touchdown? You're like, I think so. Well, I hope the ref knows, right? Like, we're trying to win the game. And so if you have that KPI, it's like, hey, you want to profit 40%. It's really easy to track a divergence from that. Whereas if you're just saying, hey, we made $15,000 one month, we made $40,000 one month, it's hard to see the relationship between the revenue and what you're putting in your pocket. And that can creep over time because people are like, oh yeah, we made 50,000, we made 60,000, we made 70,000. But when you get to the numbers, your profit margins were going down the whole time. So it's like you're earning the same profit as you were 6 months ago, but your business is doing 30% more in revenue. So it's like now you've got extra responsibilities and less money.
Absolutely. And that can happen with people without them realizing, as you're pointing out. And this can be very common as businesses start to grow. And so you want to continue to reevaluate as you're growing. And if you're at the stage where you're focusing on hiring people because you have that consistent demand, well, that's great. How much do you need in reserves per new hire so that you can onboard that person without any financial strain? And can you create a way to have that money front loaded so you're not relying on an income to pay for that onboarding? You have it set aside. You can really devote your attention to that person without relying on that return of investment for a period of time, knowing that with that devoted attention, you'll get a much more return than if you were to just kind of throw them into the fire. But
for sure. Well,
and I've done both, and there is a more preferable way of doing it, I can tell you.
Well, the difference between education experience is one is your own mistakes and the other is mistakes of others, right? This is an opportunity for education for people that haven't screwed that up to a high level, because really it takes some expensive lessons usually for this to stick. I know I made several bad hires before I made a good hire.
Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah, and most of them hurt.
And because of that being normal, what also becomes normal is people's reaction to that. They try a couple times and they believe it doesn't work because they can say, look, it didn't work with Ralph, or it didn't work with Joe, or it didn't work because you stopped.
Right. Which is a weird learned behavior. Like if you think about how fast adults give up when something doesn't work versus how fast children give up when it doesn't work. Like if most adults that had to learn how to walk again probably wouldn't. You know what I mean? They just keep falling over and back. All right, I've fallen 5 times now. This is never going to happen. It's just such a strange thing.
Well, that's where our brains get us in trouble.
Yeah.
We become much better at looking for evidence of our beliefs when we're an adult, because our brains are more developed, versus kids they're based off of pure intention.
Yes.
They want something, they go after it. They don't realize that there's all these things that could potentially prevent them from getting it. They don't care. And that's why maintaining that childlike intention and tenacity and curiosity, that's where a lot of very successful people, they kind of keep that aspect of themselves alive. And it's natural, where we get into adulthood, we're trained throughout school, maybe even college, into your first adulthood job. You're trained on doing what you're supposed to do, not achieving what you want out of life.
Right.
And those are two different skill sets of following directions and creating someone else's vision versus following your own heart and creating your own vision. Those are completely different skill sets and require different experiences and training. And so what we encourage people listening to this call is to lean in more on that curiosity, that creativity, that desire that you want, and understand that the path is already carved. You just have to decide what you want and be willing to trust the process and not lean on the old programming that has you looking at evidence that doesn't support your goal. Focusing on what does support your goal and listening to material and content like this is a great stepping stone. It's proof that you are building momentum if you're listening to stuff like this. And it literally becomes just a matter of time for you to hit your benchmark. You may not get exactly what's in your plan. We can't necessarily control everything, but we can have a lot of influence.
Almost never. But it's like you never control everything, but if you influence enough things in the right direction, it starts to happen. And
Right.
One of the things I like about the idea of focusing on raising your prices is raising your prices actually has a lot of different touch points that you can influence, right?
Yeah.
So like one of the really simple ways, and we talked about this with Callie 2 weeks ago, like developing a brand, just having a brand is a great way to raise your prices. And anybody doesn't believe that, go to Saks Fifth Avenue and then go to Walmart and watch the same pair of denim sell for like 300% more.
Right.
All it is a brand, but brand matters to people for so many reasons. And you're not going to change the way culture thinks. So you might as well use that to both your advantage and their advantage. So it's like,
That's a great explanation to answer the question, how do I raise my prices? You know, accepting the idea of raising your prices can prompt the question, well, how do I do that? You know, as Wilson's pointing out, building a brand is an excellent and almost crucial way to do that, because you have to give these homeowners reasons to pay more. Yeah. And it's been evident for a very long time now, the actual product doesn't necessarily dictate the price. It can influence the price, but it doesn't have to be the sole reason people pay more. A lot of times they'll pay more for the experience, they'll pay more for the perception, they'll pay more for many different things, even social cues.
I can afford it and you can't.
Yeah. And so if you can tap into just a couple of those reasons, it literally can be the biggest difference between you charging X versus Y, you know, really aligning your culture, your brand, your image with a higher price point, and asking yourself, what would a company that charges more look like?
Yeah.
You can literally start there. What they would look like often can become justification to charge more. You know, it can be natural to ask yourself, well, what do the expensive companies have as equipment, or what do they do with their team members? How do they pay people? Well, those things can certainly influence the price justification as well. But the biggest one is going to be perception. It's going to be your image. And so fortunately, you can dramatically change your business's image with a very low investment, money-wise.
Not hard, not expensive.
Improve your website, you know, have a logo created, you know, wear a shirt with your logo on it, have proposals with your logo on it, you know, have a little bit of, what's that?
That reminds me, unrelated. So we have a new student that's going live in the Raleigh-Durham area, and Stephen, remind me to send you his logo after this.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Sweet.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Just having a good logo can create the perception in the homeowner's eyes that this company is legitimate. Yeah. And as we all know, at this point, you know, sales is just a matter of developing that trust and creating a connection with the homeowner. And it naturally becomes questions like, what do I do to develop the customer's trust? Well, again, having that brand is what can do that. Yep. And now if you show up in the house and you're at least nice and you're focused, that often can be sufficient to get these sales. You don't have to be the biggest charmer in the world, but you do need a system. You do need a process to follow inside of that sales appointment, so you don't have to lean on your personality. You know, if you have a great personality, great, but you don't need a good personality to get consistent sales. You just need a process. And so
one thing that is great, and the idea of saying, okay, well, what would a big company have? The other thing that I like, and this is a Charlie Munger thing that I've been, I went back and watched some videos on and have enjoyed. He talks about this in, they talk about this a lot in From Darwin to Munger, which is a great book to read. Essentially, one way of thinking through your problems is to go, okay, how do I solve X, right? But humans are way better at pointing out problems than we are coming up with solutions. It's this weird thing about us. So instead, it's like, okay, well, you do the inverse of that. So it's like, well, instead of how do I get people to pay me more? It's like, well, what would make people pay me less? It's like, oh, I know. Don't show up on time. Oh, have no website. Be really inconsistent. Only text after 10 p.m. And you can come up with a list of all these things that will piss people off and cause them to be willing to pay you less money. Have no proof or pictures anywhere of what we do, right? Never show up in the same matching shirt. Have a van that's got rust spots all over it. And all you have to do is make a list of all the things that would make people want to pay you less, and then just do the opposite. So instead of creating this long problem solving, envisioning, all the things you could do perfectly, just literally go through all the things you could do wrong and make sure those things don't happen. And a lot of times that's enough to up people's game dramatically.
Yeah. And don't make it this big, for those listening, I wouldn't encourage you to make it this big transformation or this huge, goal that you now have for yourself that becomes this big, intimidating, box that you keep kicking down the road. Just start with one of them. Get a logo. If you have a logo, get some shirts. If you have a shirts, maybe get some magnets or some signage on your vans. Things like that. Just start off small and chip away at it. But write down all of these ideas. I like to use Apple Notes, and you can make the little bubbles, the to-do items, little check boxes or whatever. And, create a list of all of these things you think would improve your business and start checking them off as you go through your week. Strive to achieve one of those things, and you'll be surprised how far you can get over the course of just a couple of months. And so that's one idea, is to raise your prices. Ask yourself, what can you do to justify that price raise? And again, a lot of you, I don't know if I mentioned this actually, but a lot of you are in the position where you don't have to do anything different to your business in order to raise your prices. Unfortunately, inflation has affected everyone, and so that expectation also is in everyone.
Wait,
and so
the government told me I'm allowed to think that yet?
And so it's not going to be a hard argument or hard for anyone to understand why you have to raise your prices, regardless of you being a better company. If you want to provide the same quality that you've provided customers a year ago, you have to raise your prices. And so bumping that up at the very least to cover your additional expenses is going to be crucial. And once you can get to that point, you can then maybe prove to yourself that raising your prices is not going to be at the detriment of your business. And then once you kind of give yourself some evidence that you can raise your prices, focus on some of the reasons that you can implement or the reasons you can give to these homeowners to pay even more. And so that's when you can start thinking about, maybe it's increasing my brand, or maybe it's plugging in systems and maybe doing things a more effective way or at a higher quality. Create some reasons why these homeowners would want to pay above market rates, and then position yourself, accepting the idea that there's always going to be someone most expensive. And you can look at that person, well, what do they do differently to be able to charge that much? And then look at the cheapest guys. What do they do to be able to charge as little as they do? And don't do what the cheap guys do, and do what the expensive companies are doing, and position yourself somewhere in the middle. If you want to be at that I bracket, well, you got to bring your A game in a consistent way. And it might take you some time to build consistency at the highest price point, but it's been proven to you by looking at this person in your market that it is not impossible to charge that much. The fact that they are still in business can often point to the validity of what they're doing. You can still be in business and be a crappy, cheap company that no one really likes, or you can be that company that everyone wants to hire, but they can't because they're booked out so far and they charge so much. You can decide to be that type of company. And so raising your prices can be a crucial way to increase your revenue and profit, but there's other ways as well. Well, and you and I spoke a little bit about increasing your conversion rate with your leads. If you're having a steady lead flow, even if you don't change your pricing, but you change your conversion rates, you're going to increase your revenue and your profits.
And it's an easy one to do. Same thing with raising your prices. It's a really there's a lot of facets to this one, and you can just tweak each one a little bit and see huge increases. Dude, this is the one I try and talk to contractors the most about, because it's my personal point of contention that we spend so much money on tools and so little money on training. And you're going to make infinitely more by becoming good at sales than you are from having a 20-volt screwdriver instead of drill instead of an 18-volt drill. Like it doesn't, one yields massive results and the other doesn't. Going from a 15% closing ratio to a 20% closing ratio, if you have the same number of leads, is a 25% increase in revenue for your business. That's ridiculous. Right. It's such a massive gap. And for a lot of times it's really easy. So if you want to increase sales conversion, it always comes down, in my opinion, to three things. One, it is four, the speed at which you reach out, right? Because obviously, and they've done some studies on this, the first person to contact somebody that's requesting quotes is 50% more likely to win that deal. Mm-hmm. And when you have 5 contractors reaching out, if you have a 50% chance and there's 4 others that split the 50% chance, you're literally 4 times more likely than any of your other competitors, which is a big deal. It's a really, really big deal. The second thing is lead nurturing. This is something we almost never see in the world of contracting.
First, maybe you can explain what lead nurturing is for people that aren't familiar with that phrase.
Yeah, so great example. Anytime somebody requests a quote from our cabinet shop, the first thing that happens is they immediately get an email that has a video that we pre-recorded that looks like it's fresh. That's like, hey, and my partner Logan, he's the one in it. He's like, hey, I'm Logan. I just wanted you to know I saw that you requested some information. I want to tell you a little bit more about our company. Here's some things we believe in. This is why we're so awesome. Isn't that really cool? And then we send another one like, hey, remember I sent you that email? I'm so glad you're getting a quote. I want to tell you a little bit more about our company and how we got to be and why this is such a big deal to us. And so we have a series of 12 touch points, different texts, emails, the whole 9 yards, videos that these people see before Logan ever gets to the house.
Yeah.
So by the time we get to the house, there are people like, oh my God, I love your story. Your dog is so cute. And you won't believe it. And they're like, they're friends. As far as they're concerned, they're friends. And it makes closing the deal much easier. But more importantly, because, they've seen us so many times after we leave the bid or assuming we didn't close the first meeting, which we do pretty frequently, when that homeowner is now considering between the different contractors, it's like 3 people she can kind of remember and the one person that she feels like she's been on 4 dates with, you know what I mean? And so it just yields just a significantly higher conversion. And if it's set up properly and automated well, it's not hard to do.
Absolutely. And that's something you pointed out. You can automate all of this. And so if those listening just take the time to set this up or have it set up for you, it can dramatically increase your revenue and profits. And it really can develop your brand, which builds perpetual profits down the road. And it makes your job easier as a salesperson, or if you have salespeople, it makes their job a lot easier because you have a system that's developing that trust and rapport and connection already before they get to the house. So it, as Wilson pointed out, it gives them something to compare, and they will naturally compare you versus other companies who aren't doing that.
Yep.
And if you were to take a gamble on who is going to work in your house, you're going to choose the company that you trust more and that you're more familiar with. It's just common sense. And so you want to set up ways to where that can be done for you automatically, because no one has enough time to treat every lead like you would your mom's kitchen or your mom's house. But you can create a system that
makes them feel that way.
Yeah, it gives them that same effect, and it warrants and justifies a higher price point. And so increasing your conversion is going to be huge. Wilson pointed out just being the first one to reach out to these people becomes a major impact. And so if you can knock that one out and have a consistent way of reaching out to them automatically, you're going to exponentially increase your revenue, and you're going to get to the point where you have too much demand and not enough ability to fulfill on all of your work, where you get to the point where you have to turn down business, or you're able to spend a lot less on leads, which is great. And so really taking that, What's that?
It goes back to saving money because this is kind
Yeah.
of win-win, right? You can make
Saves money
you
and
can also
increases your
save.
profits.
Exactly.
And so it helps your bottom line by a ton. And I would really encourage all of you listening to put that on your to-do list, create lead automations. If you can just write that down, you'll know what that means. An automated way to reach out to your leads immediately, an automated way to reach out to your leads periodically, and especially using video as a way to do that.
Yep.
Or at least a way to communicate to them. You can send that through text or email, ideally both.
Yeah, we did both. One thing that I don't want to go too deep on because we are going to run out of time. But the other thing that's really nice with nurturing that a lot of people don't think about, it's not just that we're saying, hey, we're telling them about ourselves. We're pre-framing important ideas. And so like one of the things that we always talk about is we're not the cheapest. We're nowhere near the cheapest. And we wouldn't want to be the cheapest for all these reasons that sells against things other people are going to say. Right. And so it's kind of cool because you have customers that will say what you would want a customer to say because they are now sold on that being the right idea. And so it's kind of fun because when you create this, you can get really creative about creating the journey your customer is going to want to go on and really going after that ideal avatar in a way that is a really awesome win-win situation. And so as you guys are making that, think about that. Like, what are the things you'd want the customer to hear? What are the objections you'd want to cover before you ever go into the house?
Absolutely. And that's, again, something you just have to have set up. And once you set it up, you can forget about it for a while, maybe update it every year or so, but, record new videos every so often, but you can set it up and it will just continue to work for you. It's one of the beauties of it being automated.
Yep.
And one more thing I wanted to talk about is in the ability to raise revenue and increase your profits is cross-selling. So, Wilson and I both specialize with cabinet shops, but it's very possible that our business will sell countertops or house painting or flooring or backsplashes. This has happened on a regular basis because of the network that we develop. We call it, maybe you've heard us say this before, but we call it the referral network, where we have local vendors throughout the areas that we serve, and we form referral relationships with them. We refer them, they refer us, everyone wins. And when you create these arrangements with these vendors, you create a profit margin on both sides. Just like we would give someone a commission for selling a job for us in-house or on the street, they will gladly allow us to either mark it up. They give us a contractor discount or a wholesale discount, and then we will charge retail pricing and we run the fulfillment through their operation, or we simply refer them to this vendor and the vendor will send us a commission. Yep. We do it both ways, and it can dramatically increase your bottom line profit because these services that you're selling, you're not doing any fulfillment on. So you don't have any labor costs. You don't have any additional material costs. You're not even having to manage the project. So there's no mental strain really on any of these type of referral arrangements. What's that?
That's a real cost people don't think about. Like the mental strain, extra, like that's real.
Right. And so it's something to highly consider as a way to increase your profits is construct a way for you to arbitrage or resell other people's services. Countertops are a great one. Flooring, cabinets, if you're not in the cabinet industry, referring cabinets is a great way to make an extra commission. And so whatever industry you're in, if you're in windows, and so you can refer people to doors, or if you're in roofing, you can refer people for gutters
or solar.
What's that?
Solar.
Yeah, or solar. There's plenty of ways to sell to your customer without you having to do additional work. And a lot of times your customer will thank you for it because it helps them in their due diligence process because they want to hire someone that they can rely on. And it's easier for them to kind of leverage your review because it's easy for them to think that you wouldn't be referring them if they weren't a legitimate company. And so the homeowner is a little bit more confident in your review or referral than them going on Google and trying to take other salespeople's word for it. And so as you're selling them on your primary service, asking them if they have any other needs is a simple way to plug in additional profit for yourself.
Yeah. And here's the fun thing, because we just dumped a bunch of stuff in 30 minutes. If you make a list of everything we talked about, pick one and implement one thing a week, there was a lot in there. It might take you 10 weeks, right? But in 10 weeks, you could literally increase the amount of revenue by 20, 30% and the profit by an extra 10%. And those numbers compound. Like there's a lot of good stuff in there, but you have to just implement it. You can't just learn it. You got to implement it.
Absolutely. And so if you guys have any questions on this stuff, please don't hesitate to send us an email at support@cabinetstartup.com. Regardless of what trade you're in, a lot of the challenges are very similar. So we'd be glad to give you some guidance on whatever you're going through. Again, that's support@cabinetstartup.com. And until then, we'll catch you guys same time, same place next week. Have a great one.